In this video, we'll be talking about opportunity cost. In Chapter 1, Section 1, we introduced what is economics. We looked at some of the basic terms that are involved with it. Now we're going a little bit deeper and talking about something called opportunity costs. How does opportunity cost affect decision making is what we're looking at here tonight. Trade-offs. Trade-offs is a term to identify an opportunity cost. This is the act of giving up one benefit in order to gain another greater benefit. I want you to come up with an individual level example, something individually for you that you would consider a trade-off, and then something that would be on the business level. So pause this video for a second, turn to your neighbor or neighbors, and discuss an individual example and a business level example. Once you have done this, now you're ready to move on. Other trade-offs when it comes to the government level, there's something called guns and butter. This is the idea that guns are military-minded and butter is more consumer-minded. So if we were to identify a country, what do you think the country would be if it was more strict on military goods? They maybe have the draft that is required, maybe they have a couple years of service. Which one would that be? Would that be guns, more guns related, or more butter? And then on the other one, what would be an example of a country that would have more butter? So again, pause for a second, talk to your neighbor, and identify a country that would be more heavy in guns, and then identify a country that is heavier in butter. Now that you discuss this with your partner, you're ready to move on. There's something called opportunity cost, and that's what this section is all about. This is finding the most desirable alternative given up as a result of a decision. So, for instance, you have a test that is going on tomorrow, and you have not studied whatsoever. So, you have the choice to make. How many hours of sleep will you give up in order to study? This would be the opportunity cost because you're giving up something that is desirable, which you can't have two things. Let's use another example. Let's use the example of eating breakfast. Some of us were adamant that we're going to eat breakfast every morning. Other of us, depends if I have time. Others, I don't eat breakfast whatsoever. So what you could do with this decision-making grid is you could write down all the benefits of choosing the alternative from eating breakfast and not eating breakfast. And then the benefits foregone would be what are the things you're giving up to choosing the alternative. And then the opportunity cost is what is the number one thing that would be the most desirable thing that you'd be giving up by eating breakfast or on the other side of not eating breakfast. So take a minute with your partner, either side of you, group of three is fine as well. Go ahead, talk about the benefits of choosing, the benefits foregone, and what you think the opportunity cost would be. And we'll stick with the topic of eating breakfast in the morning versus not eating breakfast in the morning. Here is a quote that my economics class discusses each year. And the quote is simply asking, is choosing is refusing? Do you agree with that? It's kind of difficult to see it in this video here, but there is a question right here, and it's saying, is choosing not to say anything the same as agreeing with what is being done? So here is what an economist would define an opportunity cost. Choosing is refusing. Now look at the question, is choosing not to say something the same as agreeing with what is being done? Turn to your neighbor again and come up with a scenario that both of you agree upon or don't agree upon, where you agree with the statement or you can deny this statement. So the quote is, choosing is refusing. Is choosing not to say something the same as agreeing with what is being done? Look at the quote, come up with a scenario, look at the question, and see what you and your partner next to you has to say about this. Next, we have something called thinking at the margin. So the whole process that we looked at a couple slides ago is the process of deciding whether to do or use one additional unit of some resource. This is known as a cost-benefit analysis. This is used on a personal level. This is used in business. This is used in government. This is the idea that you compare, it's like a pros and cons list, trying to figure out all the pros and all the cons. Marginal cost is the extra cost of adding one unit. Marginal benefit is the extra benefit of adding one unit. Let me give you an example. If you work for an employer and you're coming to the end of the night and there's a lot of work to be done, and he turns to you and says, can you work the next 2 to 3 hours in addition to your 8-hour shift? Or maybe it's just an hour. Well, he is looking at this from a cost-benefit analysis. He's saying, I am willing to pay you one more hour. This would be a marginal cost, extra cost of adding one unit. But the benefit that we would receive from your work ethic would far outreach the cost. Or maybe there is a lot of work and your employer says, okay, we're going to let you go early. That could be that the cost for paying that extra hour is not worth it, so there is not enough benefit. So same thing with employers of trying to hire more employees. Is the cost worth it? Or does it need to, or is the benefit not strong enough to outreach the cost? So a pros cons list, a cost benefit analysis, trying to decide, does the sacrifice, is there more gain than the sacrifice? And last slide. Take a look at the scenario here. We kind of talked about it earlier. And then after looking at the scenario here, turn to your neighbor and ask them which opportunity cost, which benefit, which option would they choose? Would they have chosen the first hour of extra study time, the second hour of extra study time, or the third hour of extra study time? There's the benefits, there's the opportunity cost. Ask your neighbor which one they would do. This is the end of Chapter 1, Section 2, Opportunity Cost.